Number 21, let them fail, stumble, fall, and suffer. How do you raise a self-reliant and compassionate child? Don't swoop in to rescue them.
Dear Family is a podcast hosted by Rachel Steinman, a writer, an educator, and a mental health advocate. And Rachel gets us up close and personal, so we feel a strong connection, familiarity, and comfort with her guests. So settle in and join us as we search for true healing and journey with Rachel and her most interesting guests.
This is Rachel Steinman, and I am so excited to bring you a solo podcast. It's the first one I've done in a while. The last one was back in April when it was my 40th episode. Before I begin, I just want to thank you so much for listening and subscribing. Definitely subscribe. That really helps me out. And thank you so much for writing those 5-star reviews and sharing with your friends and your family. Word of mouth is huge and so helpful. And last but not least, thank you so much for following me on all the social media platforms at Right Now Rachel, and that's right with a W. I hope you're doing well and hanging in there. And for those of you who have kids starting school, I wish them the best of luck. I wish you the best of luck. This is not how we pictured it, but we are going to get through this together. Our kids are resilient, and if we're supporting them, they're going to do fantastic. Which brings me to my new podcast based on an essay I wrote. The title is A Counterintuitive List of 24 Ways to Be the Happiest and the Greatest Parent. And it's counterintuitive because, for example, number 1 is to be selfish. I think what you will find is that by following this parenting advice, my goal is to make you happy and to make you feel good about yourself because parenting is not easy. So here we go. You've all heard the airplane metaphor about parents putting their oxygen masks on first before helping their child? Well, it's a cliche for a reason because parenting can, in fact, really suck the mother effing oxygen from you, and you absolutely do need to take care of yourself first. Parents, especially moms, we're not always the best at taking this advice, but I am here today to tell you that if you are happy and fulfilled, your family is much more likely to follow suit. So this list of 24 ways to make you a happy and great parent, parenting advice, it may feel a bit counterintuitive, but eventually, if you take it to heart, it's going to become intuitive. And the best part about it is that your happiness, it's going to attract more happiness, and your family life will become more blissful. Now, who doesn't want that? We all know parenting is both the hardest and the most rewarding job you will ever have, but it's also a 24-hour gig that never ends. Even when your kids move out, they're still keeping us up at night because they're forever at the top of our minds and in our hearts. Raising kids to be physically and mentally healthy, happy, productive, kind, motivated, helpful, self-possessed, intellectually curious, philanthropic, active, adventurous, financially capable, and the list can go on and on. Well, that's a truly Herculean feat. We also want to encourage our kids to have grit, be creative, think outside the box, be balanced, make and keep friends, help with chores, think of others. Oh my goodness, well, that list can go on and on. If only we were handed a parenting manual that said something like, quote, follow these steps for resiliency. Turn to page 27 to problem solve when this fill in the blank inevitable or completely unpredictable issue comes up. I have to confess, I was that mom who read all the parenting manuals, starting with how to get my baby to sleep through the night as an infant. I didn't dare tell the other parents at the mommy/daddy and me class how I got my daughter to bed at 7 p.m. and how she slept until 8:30 a.m., or that I'd never slept so much in my life. Now, of course, as the parenting gods would have it, I was also that mom whose second child was not nearly as cooperative. But it didn't matter because I was so much more relaxed, as second time around usually proves to be. I continue to be that parent who read manuals and attended all the school lectures about my growing adolescents, who miraculously grew taller than me and became enthusiastic teenagers with their own very strong opinions. I'm still reading those manuals, especially as my older daughter is getting ready to fly the coop and leave our warm nest, like the amazing book I've discussed before called Grown and Flown. and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And I even had the great pleasure to interview the co-founder, Lisa Heffernan, for the Dear Family podcast, and I'll have that link in the show notes. I've never taken it for granted how grateful I am that I've become the parent who my friends and family members and even acquaintances turn to or send their friends and family members to when they have questions about raising happy and well-adjusted kids. Maybe I've become this accidental parenting expert because I have daughters who are thriving in their own ways, but who never have to be perfect. Because let's be honest, who's perfect anyways? Maybe it's because I can laugh at myself. Or maybe it's because I've decided to dedicate myself to helping others see the importance of protecting and cultivating our mental health. We all deserve to live life to the fullest while celebrating our beautifully complicated families. Yes, I studied developmental psychology for my undergraduate work, and I have my master's in education. And yes, I have 2 teaching credentials, and I've taught kindergarten and first grade for many years. And yes, I've had the great opportunity to substitute teach every elementary grade, even getting that opportunity to be the school librarian, which, by the way, I highly recommend you volunteer to be a librarian at some point in your life, especially if you love seeing beautiful angel faces staring back at you as you share a great story, because there's nothing like seeing those children's eyes light up as their imagination ignites. It's truly magic. Could my parenting expertise have begun when I taught an after-school dance class to awkward tweens and I made them feel great about themselves? Or maybe it began when I tutored kids whose parents were overly anxious about their child's reading or math abilities so that I could make some extra money, but I also ended up bolstering their kids' self-confidence. Or maybe it's because I loved being involved in and creating and administering school admissions at multiple different schools where I recognized kids' various learning styles and always made sure to highlight their strengths. Now, I was that parent who, besides being a fly on the wall at my daughter's school, when I substitute taught each grade, I got to know the staff intimately. But I've also worn practically every hat you can think of as a parent volunteer. I've been a room parent for every grade, including being the head room parent, the one who sends all those annoying emails. I planned the back-to-school picnic. I volunteered at the student store and the school fair and the holiday boutique. I cooked for and helped with teacher appreciation lunches, and I supplied the surprise snacks. I organized cooking and art centers. I chaperoned school dances and helped with school formals. I've been the basketball and volleyball team parent and organized snack schedules. I even planned a basketball tournament to raise funds for a school charity. Now, you may think I did this all selflessly out of the goodness of my heart for my children and the other children who benefited, but truth be told, and this holds true for any service, I was the one who got the most in return. I met some truly incredible people who have become close friends and felt part of a community. So my heart was opened up to the beauty of giving, and I learned some new skills that built my confidence to jump into situations I knew nothing about. As I share this, I officially have 2 high schoolers, a 9th grader and a 12th grader, 2 very independent young women who act as if they don't care if I'm involved in their school anymore. Or at least that's what they tell me. I'm going to check back on how they feel about all my years of service when they have kids of their own. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that not all parents have the luxury to give of their time during the day or even at night after a long workday. But the important thing to remember is that get involved as much as you can. Carving out an hour on the weekend to do something special with your child, it's never going to go unnoticed or underappreciated, because in the end, it's all about love. The Beatles said, all you need is love. Love is all you need. If your child feels loved and supported, they're going to grow up and continue to give it back, and love will come back to them. It's a beautiful cycle. Whereas love is never counterintuitive. This list that I'm about to share with you on parenting advice, it might be 24 ways to be the happiest and greatest parent ever. Number 1, put yourself first and be selfish. Putting yourself first is self-care, and it refuels your battery so you can give freely, which in the end is not really selfish. Putting yourself first is self-promoting, self-loving, and self-fulfilling. And the biggest bonus of it all, you're going to be happier, and then your partner and your kids and your friends, they're going to all want to be around you more, which is going to attract even more happiness. Number 2, strive for greatness, but never perfection. I will take done well over perfect any day. Perfect is a concept that is unachievable. By the way, you're going to feel freer when it's done. You're going to move through your to-do list and be able to move on. I'd also recommend celebrating all your beautiful flaws because it makes you unique. Every one of us is born as a complete individual. Number 3, get rid of shoulds. Just saying, quote, a good parent should, well, that causes anyone anxiety. Instead, a good parent tries their best and does the best with what they're given. We're all learning, and when we know better, we do better. Number 4, those of you that know me know this is true. Be an open book role model. Now, you're the first person your child ever knows, and you're her or his first teacher. So don't be afraid to show your flaws and be open about them or admit when you don't know something or you need help. To be vulnerable is to be brave. If you show your kids you can cry and feel sad and then pick yourself back up and persevere, you are modeling at your finest. They're going to learn strength vicariously from watching that. And that's going to help them get through difficult times. Charlie Mackesy has one of the greatest quotes. I love this quote. Asking for help isn't giving up. It's refusing to give up. It's one of the things I talk about a lot when it comes to mental health. There is no shame in asking for help. Number 5, discuss sad and tragic stories. Now, obviously, what you share should be age appropriate, right? Like a 3-year-old does not need to see the atrocities of the Holocaust. But if we shelter our kids from heartache, then they may think their feelings need to be pushed down. Using words that they can eventually use to name and describe their own feelings, well, that helps them deal with a range of emotions when they come up. So your kids are going to know that they can come to you if they have concerns or questions because nothing is off topic. And pointing out that suffering is a human experience that passes, if they can learn that now, it's super helpful. Number 6, talk about your family's history of mental health issues. Mental illness can begin around 14 years old and sometimes even earlier. And your kids can inherit that genetic predisposition that your family may have struggled with. So by having an open dialogue about your family's mental health history, you're opening up communication and you're checking in on them and you're ridding the stigma that if there is in fact an issue to be dealt with, you're putting yourself in a better position to get the help they need and right away. Because the good news is treatment works and the sooner the better. And so many people don't ever get the mental help they need with an average of 11 years until they seek therapy or help after they first notice the signs of a mental health issue. And we know some people never receive help. Would you not take your child to the doctor if they complained about a stomachache after a week? Why not check in on their mental health? Number 7, talk about anxiety. This is a big one lately with our kids. We need to address that elephant in the room. And we need to also reassure them that anxiety is a normal human experience. And it actually can be helpful in pushing us to get things done and fuel our fires. But it's when anxiety gets really out of control and stops you from moving forward that it needs to be dealt with. Let's call anxiety out, because if you keep pushing it down, the pressure is going to build and get greater, and eventually it's going to explode. So name the anxiety and do something to get rid of it. Maybe it's meditation or exercise or list writing or therapy or art or listening to music, or possibly it's medication, but do something about it. Number 8, encourage them to talk to strangers. It's actually our family or friends or coaches who are usually the people most likely to harm or groom a child for harm. Children are safer when they can assess people without fear and gain street smarts, not when they're paralyzed by angst. When my girls were young, we used this term tricky people. And tricky people were people who tried to trick them into something that wasn't good for them, rather than the word strangers. They also learned no adult should ever touch their bodies on their quote bathing suit parts. And if they were to ever get lost and couldn't find me or their dad or their aunt or whoever they were with, they were told to go ask another mommy who had kids for help, or to find a person in a uniform at, say, Disneyland, or maybe someone working at a store who was behind a counter. Number 9, never say never. Before I had kids, I used to watch my students' parents bribe their offspring with a treat. I sat on my high horse and I swore I would never be, quote, that parent. Not surprisingly, once I had my own kids, you know I used that ice cream or candy card when I needed it. I was that fresh-faced teacher with my newly minted teaching credential who looked down on my kindergartners' parents, who would confess to me in their parent-teacher conference how they didn't always have time to read to their kids every night. And not until I had my own kids did I not only sympathize with those hardworking and loving parents, but I looked down on myself for judging them because I didn't always have the time to read to my daughters. This was a big lesson in never judging until you walk in someone's shoes, which, let's be honest, you can't really do that anyway. So logic says, just don't judge. Number 10, let them be a little bit naughty. I have to admit, and this is with a wink, that it was the rule-breaking students who ended up stealing my heart. And it was the kids who never broke a rule who I worried about most. Obedience is for rule followers, and those that break the rules are often the people who succeed in life. Now, don't get me wrong, kids definitely need boundaries and they need rules to thrive, especially when it comes to being at home and at school, but sometimes it's okay to purposely look the other way. I love this quote, and I'm sure you've heard it before. It's by Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. Well-behaved women, and I'm going to add kids who turn into adults, seldom make history. Number 11, be curious and interested, but not too over-interested. Curiosity is contagious until it gets to be nosy. You need to learn when to back off, especially with teenagers, whose developmental milestones push us adults away as they gain their independence. Before pushing or questioning to that point where they shut you out completely, walk away ahead of it and begin again later. Now, this is a really tough one for me. Just ask my husband, because I'm not always patient and I can be nosy. But in this instance, patience really does pay off. I often find myself pacing back and forth in our hallway, biting my tongue when I've wanted to continue a conversation. But I've always been happiest, and so have my girls, when I let it rest or decided not to send that hot-headed text and come back and revisited the discussion at a better and almost always calmer time. Number 12, let them handle dangerous tools. When your kid shows interest in preparing food with sharp knives or using power tools, don't let your fears stop them. I might also add like climbing something high or doing a sport that might be a little bit dangerous. Now, at first, you need to be close by to supervise, or a coach needs to be close by. But the more you allow them to explore, the more trust you put in them, the better and more efficient they will be at using those tools later on, which builds up their confidence, which we all know is a key to feeling happy. And guess what? Maybe they're going to become a master chef and carpenter in the process. Number 13, respect is two-sided. This is simple. If you want them to respect your privacy, your authority, your whatever you want them to respect, show them the same in return. They're surely going to take notice when you step back and let them command it. Number 14, having bad or no communication, take a hike or change scenery. When you're at each other's throats, not communicating or not connecting, one of the best things you can do is get outside into the fresh air. A sure way to get your kid to open up is to take a long drive and put on some music, or do a side-by-side activity that's physical, like baking or gardening or hiking. Don't forget, have them eat something first, because empty stomachs make for empty dialogue, and we all know how an ice cream date can make for big smiles. Number 15, don't create a digital footprint without their permission. Sharenting, or oversharenting, is a term when parents overshare photos and other data of their children on social media. As proud parents, we want to show our kids off, but we really do need to ask their permission, because we're creating a digital footprint that they did not create. You can't always ask their permission when they're little, so if you do post pictures of your kids, make sure your accounts are private and the geolocations are turned off. When your kids get old enough, you should ask them for permission before posting. You're modeling social media etiquette and respect by doing that, and that's something you want them to learn to do with others. Now, don't get me wrong. This one is not easy for me, as evidenced by the essay I wrote called Sharenting, which I will have a link in the show notes. My podcast is called and is all about our dear family. I want to splash my social media accounts and even this essay with beautiful images of my family, but I can't. So you'll have to take my word for it that my daughters are beautiful. Number 16, let them go. Your kids don't belong to you. I often say, my girls or my loves or my daughters. But really, my daughters don't belong to me. They belong to themselves. One thing, having two girls who were both born in September and have the same genetics, who grew up under the same roof with the same family values, have shown me is that they're so different and they're born that way. So you want to honor your child's uniqueness and allow their future to unfold while supporting them, and then let them go. This is a hard one for us. I get that. The Dalai Lama has this beautiful quote: "Give the ones you love wings to fly, roots to come back, and reasons to stay." Number 17, totally counterintuitive, especially parents with young ones, but leave your kids. There's nothing better for the soul than a night out or even a trip with your girlfriends or your guy friends. When my daughters were young, my husband and I had a standing Saturday night date night. Now they're teenagers and they're actually kind of fun to be around, so we don't need to do that anymore, and we can leave them home and don't need a babysitter. But that standing Saturday night date night was something I looked forward to all week. And our daughters saw the importance of their parents making time for their relationship and that they did not always come first. Speaking about good for the soul, taking a trip without your kids, and we did this a lot. Of course, this was pre-pandemic, and I'm looking forward to it post-pandemic. It gives your marital relationship time to breathe and grow and think, and it also gives your kids space away from you. Maybe they're with some grandparents, or they're off at camp, or they're with some friends, and that's so good for them too. Number 18. Stop doing for them what they can do for themselves. Now, if you want to create a lazy and entitled child, do all their chores and never let them lift a finger. But if you want to create a grateful child who is confident in their abilities, have them do for themselves and for the family what they can do without help. My husband, again, here we go, he's better at this than me because I cannot help myself but pick up after my girls. Now, I'm not talking about their rooms. I don't clean up in their rooms because I really can't stand a mess. But here's an example. If I ask my daughter to put her dishes away and she doesn't after a certain amount of time, her dad will take her dirty dish from the kitchen and leave it on her bed. Clearly, it's something she's not into, and that lesson pushes her to not do it again. Number 19, positive reinforcement is way better than negative punishment. Now, as an educator, I learned the best practice for teaching that still to this day stands out is the powerful role of positive reinforcement. If you chastise or point out what a student, or in this matter, your son or daughter, did wrong, they're going to focus on the emotion of how bad they are feeling. And they're going to shut themselves off from listening to the lesson you're trying to teach them. But if you begin with praise about something they're doing right, and then you continue with a gentle lesson on how they can improve, I promise you the outcome will be drastically better in your favor, and you're both going to feel happier. Number 20, back off, daydream, and allow space. Let your kids be bored. It's okay. In fact, it's great. And really, there's no boredom because if your kids' minds are wandering, that's fantastic. One thing that this pandemic has shown us is how we were running on treadmills to get them to their endless list of activities. Everything they do, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, it does not need to be about what goes on their future college application. There's no one-size-fits-all education system anyway, and their happiness is beyond important. So if they need help in school, yes, reach out to their teachers or administrators, but by all means, don't do their homework for them. Slow down, unburden yourself by not over-planning, encourage them to always get a good night's sleep, so they can dream at night, and give them time to daydream about their future during the day. It's in that space between when they're going to have the opportunity to get creative and be in the moment. And that is a true path to happiness. Number 21, let them fail, stumble, fall, and suffer. How do you raise a self-reliant and compassionate child? Don't swoop in to rescue them. In other words, don't be that helicopter or lawnmower parent. I'd rather my kid not make the team or get a bad grade sooner than later, so they can realize failure isn't the end of their life. And it also might really light that fire and motivate them. It's hard to see our kids cry or suffer or feel bad, but once you see it as character forming and a valuable life lesson, it makes it a lot easier. And when they do end up making that team or get that good grade after working extra hard, just think of how much more meaningful it's going to be and how much more willing they are to be to take those bigger risks that end up having a bigger reward. Number 22, add the word yet. The power of adding yet to the end of a sentence is truly remarkable. I have just heard about a school district that changed its grading system from F for failure to NY for not yet. The students who received the not yet grade proved to be much more successful the next year than those who often dropped out after failing. If your kid says, I can't do it or I don't get it, remind them to add that small but powerful word yet to make it, I can't do it yet and I don't get it yet. Number 23, be honest about difficult subjects such as sex and drugs, but only tell them what they need to know. If your child, tween, teen, young adult asks you a question that catches you off guard, you can always make an excuse to walk away for a minute or tell them you'll get back to them. By all means, collect your thoughts in order to give sage advice, but be honest with them because they can sniff you out if you're lying and they're going to hold it against you later. Only give them the necessary information, right? A 6-year-old only needs a few details if she asks about how a baby is made compared to a 12-year-old who can comprehend more biology. Now, if your child asks you personal questions like if and when you smoked marijuana or when you lost your virginity, assess their maturity and proceed. If you aren't proud of something you did, tell them the honest truth so they can learn from your mistakes while giving them all the facts to keep them healthy and safe. And here's the last one, number 24. Give your time, not toys. Now, obviously, this does not ring true on a birthday or for Christmas or Hanukkah or a special graduation type of thing. But what kids really want is your undivided attention. It may mean doing a puzzle or teaching them a skill, but having experiences like going camping or exploring a new city or a restaurant together, that is priceless, and that's what they're going to remember. And when they do get that extra special toy or maybe that computer they've been wanting for a really long time, they're going to be so much more grateful and appreciative. And here is my last quote by Carl W. Buhner. They may forget what you said, and I'm going to add, what toys you gave them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So that is my list of parenting advice. And I hope it brings you and your family happiness. And I just want to end by saying that we all have the ability to love. So love yourself first. You will radiate joy, and your love is going to spread down to your dear kids and your partner and your family and your friends. So enjoy this beautiful life, and I wish you love and happiness and good mental health. Take care of yourself. This is Rachel Steinman. For more information or to contact me with any questions, comments, or guest ideas, please check out rightnowrachel.com. That's right with a W. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and sharing, dear family. And if you found value in what you've just heard, I would love and so appreciate a great review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, I wish you love, happiness, and good mental health.